Hi, I'm Stephen Green, National Director of Christian Voice. I just want to look briefly and from a biblical standpoint at this Conservative Party election, because the person who's going to be elected will become Prime Minister of this United Kingdom. Now, the Bible says in Exodus chapter 18, "And thou shalt place over them able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness." I think that's going to narrow it down a bit. Moreover, in 2 Samuel and chapter 23, David said, "The God of Israel said, the rock of Israel spoke to me, he that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God." After the shambles of the Johnson era, despite the good that he did of the Brexit and, well, that's about it really, we see that humility is in short supply amongst our leaders. They need humility, they need wisdom, and that comes from on high. So who have we got standing? Well, we've got Rishi Sunak. He failed to stand up against lockdowns. He brought in the ridiculously high levels of taxation to pay for all the money that he spent. It was as if a magic money tree was suddenly discovered. He's now trying to distance himself from all that. I don't think it works. Sajid Javid, who's the first of a cabinet minister to resign and trigger all of this, he was health secretary. As health secretary, he actually advocated for the lockdown for Christmas 2021 and for mandatory vaccinations and vaccination certificates. He is not the man who is going to lead a new liberal United Kingdom, for me. Then we've got Penny Mordaunt, being really touted as the front runner, you know. But it's a woman who twice in the House of Commons stood up and said, trans men are men and trans women are women. I'm sorry, Penny, that does not agree with basic biology. Now let's look at Jeremy Hunt. I'm afraid this man, you know, he's a good chap, decent fella, but he's a liberal's liberal, self-made millionaire, campaigned for Remain to stay in the EU, and even now he's going to keep the rise in national insurance and saying the NHS needs the money. I tell you, Jeremy, the NHS needs reform rather than money. Nadeem Zahawi, he looked treacherous by accepting the position of Chancellor of the Exchequer and then stabbing Boris in the back 24 hours later by calling for his resignation. You know, you've got to have men of principle who are going to stand up here. Tom Tugendhat, Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. I tell you, when the Ukraine-Russia conflict started, he was urging the government to expel Russians and seize all their property. Tom, that's fascism. That's not conservatism. But coming out, who knows what conservatism is even these days? I think, you know, there's nobody here with a clear vision for it. But we're coming to Grant Shapps. You know, again, a man who wants to spend more money on defence and cast Russia as our enemy when we should be looking to them as allies in the fight against radical Islam and bringing them more into the West to stand up against China. But then going back to what the British Empire did to China in the years of the Opium Wars, and we are hardly coming at this with clean hands. Suella Braverman, now pro-Brexit, anti-lockdown, climate change sceptic. Great. But she actually said that Boris did some good, but the UK got through the pandemic. Now, if getting through the pandemic means ruining a generation of kids' education, of increasing hospital waiting lists, of letting old folks die alone in care homes without their families, if that's getting through the pandemic with lockdowns and restrictions and face masks, if that's how a God-fearing country gets through a pandemic, then I'm not entirely certain that the Suella, we've always cheered for Suella, you know, we love her, but I'm not certain that that's going to do the stuff. She's also blindly pro-Ukraine and anti-Russian at a time when the UK should be standing for neutrality and trying to bring peace. That brings me to Kemi Badenoch. She looks good. She's against the trans agenda, the cultural establishment, identity politics. She's pledged to return the party of the UK to a low tax trajectory. She's opposed critical race theory, and also she and Liz Truss were criticised by members of the government's LGBT advisory panel after 3 members quit last year. In fact, the lesbian CV activist Jane Ozanne, one of those who resigned, said Liz Truss and Kemi Badenoch are creating a hostile environment for LGBT people where those who try to challenge them are silenced or ignored. Well, it makes a change for people who oppose the LGBT establishment being silenced and ignored, doesn't it? So we like the Kemi. And Liz Truss, well, she's launched her Tory leadership bid, and she actually scrapped the proposed changes to the gender recognition bill, which were advocated by the Penny Mordaunt, because she does not believe that people can change their genetics. So there you are. Look, the critical issues here are going to be immigration, for me abortion, the gay rights issue, but most of all trans rights, and taxation, something we haven't really mentioned, which is net zero. We've got to get that net zero fanaticism. I saw it's being advocated even today in the Telegraph by Zach Goldsmith, one of Carrie Johnson's friends. You know, these well-placed, well-funded, well-heeled elites love things like net zero and rewilding. And today, in a time of food insecurity and energy insecurity, net zero and rewilding and all these fashionable environmentalist fads have got to go. The prime duty of government is to safeguard the people, not impoverish them. That's it. You make your mind up. Leave your comments below, and I'll see you in a couple of days.